Getting to it then. The 2019 film Lighthouse, directed by Robert Eggers. To date, Eggers has only directed two films to date. He's a very young director. He's directed this, and he directed the film The Witch, which Corey has made lots of allusions to throughout the class. So this guy's got a very unique directing style, mostly through the writing. If you didn't notice, like both of these movies take place in the well distant past. The Witch takes place in the 17th century New England. This movie takes place in 19th century America. So what time period in 19th century America is left uncertain, but I this seems to take place in New England, up in Massachusetts, Maine, somewhere like that. So his movies are very unique in the sense that he does a lot of research into like how people spoke then. He uses a lot of the words and dialects. Like I was actually watched this movie on Prime, and like Prime gave a lot of like really interesting facts about the movie on the X-ray. Yeah, he went back and read a bunch of old writers for this movie, like Herman Melville, and he read Moby Dick again. He read lots of writers I'm familiar with because I'm a 19th century American specialist. That's what I did for my doctorate on. He read some Sarah Jewett novels. She was a Maine writer in the 19th century. He was well known for her local vernacular dialects and her stories. He read Robert Louis Stevenson, who wrote Treasure Island. Right, he read that for the story. He went back and researched nautical terms and things like that. So yeah, lots of research goes into the writing of his movies. I definitely this Witch is the same way. It sounds like you're reading from the King James Bible the whole time that you watch his movie The Witch. So both Pattinson and Defoe's characters in this movie both have very strong dialects. Defoe kind of has this more European type of sea dialect in the movie. Pattinson's got a very New England accent in the movie. So the way this film was shot is interesting in and of itself. It's a 2019 film. He shot it on this very old type of film. This is the type of film this movie was shot on. It's the same type of film that they used in the 1890s and the early 1900s in the silent film era. So this is a very unique type of film that he uses in this. If you noticed, this movie wasn't widescreen when you watched it. I don't know what kind of TV you watched it on. It wasn't widescreen. It was very much sort of a top to bottom picture, sort of like this. It wasn't wide. This was like a top to bottom type of movie. That was the aspect ratio of a lot of these older sort of silent films. I was reading up on the type of film this was made in. It's very hard to get good lighting in this type of film. Like this is much older film than even like what we watched earlier, Grapes of Wrath and Casablanca, like the 40s movies we watched. This is very much a difficult type of film to shoot on. So even like getting the lighting right, especially in these indoor scenes that we have in the movie, it's very much a challenge. I read that the scenes where they're like eating dinner together, like the room that they was so brightly lit, like it was so hard to see to get the lighting right on this old black and white type of film. So we could talk a little bit about that today. That's one thing we can discuss, right? How do you guys think that this type of film, what did it do for the cinematography of the movie especially? it looks very grainy and old, right? It looks that you could probably be fooled by watching this movie and thinking it is a really, really old movie, which is interesting. But beyond that, we have a movie with pretty much two characters, right? We get William Dafoe's character, who's the older guy, right? And we have Robert Pattinson's character, who both characters are named Thomas in the movie, right? Pattinson says his name's Ephraim at first, right? But then he confesses later that that's not the case. So there's lots of ways to dive into the film. Ryan, I'll let you. I told you last class I was going to do this to you. You explain to the class, Ryan, what Lovecraftian horror is.
Can you repeat that real quick, please? I had to go grab my dog.
Yeah, explain to the class what Lovecraftian horror is.
Lovecraftian horror is essentially, most of it is dribblings of madmen. It starts off with the character being perfectly sane, and as the story goes on, he gets more and more insane until at the end it's pure insanity. Anything he says is in like dribblings of almost not understandable words or incomplete sentences.
Right? What type of things cause you to go mad in Lovecraftian horror?
The unknown, like the Call of Cthulhu. He goes mad because Cthulhu is a being of unsurmountable power and a being that is unknown to any kind.
If you don't mind, Ron, could I jump in and add to this a little bit?
Go ahead.
A big thing in Lovecraftian horror is existential fear. It is fear of, like Ron said, the unknown, fear of things that are greater than us, fear of things that we can't comprehend, things that we've never comprehended. Because the human understanding, we think in building blocks. All of the monsters, all the fictional things that we think of have their roots in real things. And Lovecraftian horror is the horror of something that we've never even conceived, even the building blocks of.
Right? Yeah, so we're talking about the ideas of the writer H.P. Lovecraft, who wrote in the early 20th century, right? He wrote a lot of stories about these old gods, right? Like we have no idea about their existence. And these are gods that look at us like ants, right? They're not a loving God like the Christian God is, right? They're very hostile to humanity. And like the discovery of these beings causes people to go crazy, right? It causes people, this is such a, to try to wrap your mind around like this unknown thing drives people crazy to even try to think about it. So a lot of these stories from Lovecraft, right? A lot of these get translated over into like a modern sub context. Lighthouse is a good example of this type of horror, right? The fear of the unknown, going mad, going crazy. What causes you to go crazy? What causes you to lose your marbles? But there is some type of supernatural thing happening in this movie, right? That we kind of have to maybe wrap our minds around. So we talked. I picked on those two because we read a Lovecraft story in our other class. I knew those two could fill you in. So with the lead in about the film and Lovecraftian horror and all this type of stuff, what did you guys think of? What's your general impressions of this film? What did you think of it?
I loved it. Horror apparently is the genre I was born for. I absolutely loved every single movie we've watched. It's the first thing that I've noticed, which is honestly the first thing you have to notice, is that it's dark. Like the scenes that are only lit by the oil lamps seems like that's the only thing that's lighting the set. Like not just what's supposed to be lighting the room, but lighting the entire room that the entire film crew is in. And like that's part of what makes it feel so isolating to me. It's like it just gives it such a darker tone to it. The fact that it's the and I don't know why I blank all the time like this, but Willem Dafoe's speaking in like almost a parody of a pirate, but he makes it sound very convincing and very like genuine. Like if you didn't know who Willem Dafoe was and what his normal accent is, you would think that that was just how he spoke.
I'm sure you guys know of other Willem Dafoe movies. He played the Green Goblin in the Spider-Man movies back in the early 2000s. You guys probably all know him from that, at least.
I thought too when they first got on the island, seemed like there was a partly cloudy sky with sunlight popping through occasionally. And as the time went on, it began to get more cloudy out. As the movie progressed, we were in a complete dark storm. And I think that that's the way that I saw Robert Pattinson's character, Thomas Howard. At first, he seemed to be a little tentative about the job, but he wasn't a madman by that time. But it's though it progressed. I saw the movie as a progression of insanity. Then when I finally began to see that, though horror is not my favorite, the mind games are my favorite. And I felt like that it was like his mind, their mind, both their minds. And I think even my own, as I was watching it, I began to try to pick out, well, who's really insane here? And so I had to try to figure out what was visions, what was hallucinations. And as time went on in the movie, I think I began to kind of splice that in the right direction.
Other general thoughts about the film.
Well, I had to watch it at work today because I haven't had time. So I just shut my door and turned my light out and watched it. So there was a couple interruptions, but the story, I mean, I got it because I also read whenever I was, reading about the movie that in the 19th century, the lighthouse keepers had a high frequency of madness and suicide. Many assumed that they went mad due to the solitude of the demands of the job. And I mean, I can get that. I could see like what would do that to you. And a lot of the men at sea are very superstitious. So on the superstitions of how he wasn't supposed to kill that seagull, whatever it was, and then at the end they was pecking him. I mean, I loved the story, and I thought that the lighting and the black and white really put it. I don't think that it would have been as good a movie if it was in color. I believe that black and white, and then the camera angles, how you had the close-ups, and then just everything going on. I was impressed by the movie.
Yeah, the lighting in the movie is definitely a spectacular thing about it, to say the least. I love the shots of the lighthouse as it's throwing the light out into the ocean. like, so it's so spooky in the black and white. Right? That's the only word I know how to describe it. Right? It's just spooky, seeing like that light go out into the dark ocean. Like it's very spooky. That's, like I said, that's the only word I know to use here.
It has a very eerie, lonely feeling. You know, it gives you that kind of, in the scary movies, if somebody's down in a dungeon or in a basement or an attic or something all by themselves, how that gives you that feeling. That's kind of how it made me feel. Even though there was someone else there, they weren't close by any means. The only time it seemed like they got along was whenever they were totally soused. So I think that loneliness, not even having someone that you liked being around, and just that desperation and just want to do something else. Like, it had a cold, damp feeling to me. I kind of can think about all that stuff whenever you go into looking at it, but I'm sure it was musty, dusty, and smelly, and yeah, that's the kind of things I pictured.
Crystal brought to mind that something I was thinking about also was the dampness of the whole movie. Every room they walked in, every part of the lighthouse, the structure that went from one place to the lighthouse, that was all kind of damp and creepy. It reminds you of Grandpa's old cellar. And so when you were a kid, you didn't want to go to Grandpa's cellar. You were kind of afraid to go there. There was an eeriness to it. And I felt that throughout the movie. I felt that memory of that. Several years ago, my wife and I got the opportunity to go to Maine and visit several lighthouses. One, of course, was real nice and neat, painted well, but the one we got to visit just outside of, it's called Negro Island. We visited one there that was, like this. It was cold and it was damp and brought back a lot of memories. So the scenes themselves bring about a creepy and a weird feeling as you're watching these two guys drive each other mad.
Yeah, they filmed this one, I know, in Nova Scotia. So I was reading, like, during the filming of this, it was very cold, very damp and cold. Like, a lot of the weather in the movie is actually legit weather that was going on in Nova Scotia. It wasn't special effects. So I'm right there with it. It's very dreary, very dreary. You can kind of, even though the film's in black and white, you can kind of feel that dreary weather like seeping through. You can feel Robert Pattinson's pain as he was pushing the wheelbarrows and stuff, right?
Speaking to him, I found another little tidbit of information saying that whenever that they were getting drunk to play the scenes, that he would literally get so drunk that he would black out. And that they were supposed to be drinking kerosene. And like that just cracked me up that that he was actually, instead of just playing the part, he was actually going through with it, and they were getting crazy on set.
The X-ray, Amazon X-ray talked about both of the actors. Like, Defoe is the theater actor, so like he likes to rehearse and do things like that, right? Pattinson's an improv guy, so like these two actors, these two guys have incredible chemistry in the movie. Like, you have to have a movie with just two people in it, but like Pattinson's kind of got that exploding, can do anything at any moment type of acting, right? Defoe's more reserved and rehearsed. So even those two styles of acting even kind of conflict here in the movie. What do you guys? Let's talk about the performances. What do you guys think of Pattinson's performance? You guys all know Robert Pattinson's career. I don't have to spell it out, right? He has a stigma against him because of his famous role. You guys all know the role, right? And so, what do you think of his performance in this movie?
I literally unmuted to talk about how good Robert Pattinson did. He was, both of them did absolutely amazing. But Robert Pattinson did such a good job in like when I first watched the movie, you kind of have the moment of like, there's only two people here. Who are we supposed to be rooting for? And you really don't know. Like it focuses more on Robert Pattinson, so it kind of feels like he's the one you should be rooting for. But both of them just feel very reserved, or not necessarily reserved, but both of them feel just their personalities just clash, and they really don't get along with each other. And Robert Pattinson was able to just convey uh, that tone back, not wanting to talk, and kind of like a quiet butthole, to for lack of a better word, just kind of being really dickish. But he was top notch. Both of them were great.
I believe to the point that when I found the information out that they were going to have to be there 4 weeks together, I'm thinking, man, I don't want to be with Thomas Wake for 4 weeks. I mean, he's getting on my nerves. He's bossy. He's not going to explain anything for me to do it the right way. He's just going to have me pushing that wheelbarrow with that coal. And I couldn't understand that, why they had the coal so far away. But nevertheless, it was just, I don't know. I felt myself going insane. Just having to be with him constantly, eat his cooking, and sit there across from the table, give a toast that I really don't want to give to. I kind of felt I was like Corey. I didn't know who to root for. At first, I was kind of rooting for the Robert or Thomas Howard, but after a while, I started leaning the other direction, so I really didn't know what I was doing.
Should pale death with triple dread make the ocean caves their bed? What's the rest of it? God who hears the surges roll, deign to save our suppliant soul. He keeps saying that. Keeps saying that through the movie.
That's the thing. That's another thing to love about it, is it seems authentic in the fact that they bring out sea shanties and all this type of stuff that's like what they would actually sing and what they would actually say and do and stuff like that.
I agree. And I thought Pattinson done a great job. But I mean, at first I was rooting for him because I felt like that he was the underdog, and this old man is just not happy with anything. He's just so miserable himself that he can't be pleased at all. And but then in the end, like, I don't know if I rooted for anybody. I rooted for me because they were just, but I can imagine what it would be like. I mean, I can't imagine having to be somewhere where it's just me and somebody that I absolutely can't stand, that no matter what you do, you can't please them, or that, on the other hand, that somebody can't do anything to please me. That would be difficult. And then, as he's going insane, you have to the old man had to deal with him. You know, he had to deal with his actions and what he was saying, and you know that would be difficult too. But yeah, I definitely thought that he done a good job, but that would have been a hard role to get totally focused in on.
Yeah, because you know, old people were set in their ways. I know. I'm old. I understand that. You get set in your ways. You think it ought to be done this way, and then you know, you learn. And I learned in this movie, the old way is not always the right way, and it's unnerving having to listen to that all the time. And so I think that William Defoe's character kind of put him over the edge. Apparently, he'd put other people over the edge too. So Defoe, I think certainly they both did incredible jobs on this film. It made you become part of the film. That if you were there, you felt like you was going to go crazy yourself. So they did their job.
Nicole, what did you think about this? I know you're a Pattinson fan, right? What did you think of his performance here?
I thought that this performance was absolutely captivating. I mean, he embodied madness in a way that I really didn't expect him to be able to. You know, especially with actors like him, you look at them and you think, you see the characters they've played in the past. Like I looked at him when I first started watching the movie, and it wasn't immediate, but eventually I was like, oh, that's Edward. But throughout, I started losing that. And I really, really got drawn into this movie.
He's Edward, and he's also our next Batman, right? I don't know if you guys knew that.
There was a lot of controversy about him being Batman, about him getting in shape or not. I know that was one of the biggest things, but they say the people on production say that he turned it around really quick and is doing really well.
Everybody's always upset at first, and then the actor ends up knocking it out of the park. Right? I remember when people were mad that Heath Ledger got casted as the Joker, and then he ended up knocking it out. So.
Yeah, that was the movie that he died while doing, wasn't it?
Yep.
And wasn't able to finish it.
I think he died right around the time it was in post-production. So the theory is he went crazy trying to play the part. That's what a lot of people try to say about that movie.
He was an awesome actor. I hate that we lost him so soon. I liked him a lot.
Right, so maybe now that we're talking about performances, we can dive into the plot a little bit here. I don't know if you guys, what'd you guys think of that ending of this movie, like with the seagulls, and I guess even we can kind of lead into that by even talking about the supernatural in the movie. Do you think anything is supernatural in this movie, or is it just these two guys going crazy? Do you think
I feel like there has to be some level of supernatural. I don't know exactly what. It's never obvious. It's never over the top. Like you don't see like Poseidon or Triton or whoever's the god of the sea just come out and smite him with his tridents. But it's like it kind of has the karma type of thing where it's like you mysteriously, after you screwed over these two people, you just happen to get exactly what you were told you were going to get earlier on. You were going to get picked to death by birds and forgotten about. So it's saying it places the way it's placed, the way everything unfolds afterwards, makes it feel like it has to be supernatural, even though it just kind of acts like it's naturally occurring.
You know, too, Corey, from his movie The Witch, he also used animals in that way in that movie too, right? With the goats, like you don't know if the goat is really evil or not.
I didn't see it as much of like supernatural as I did just someone going insane. They have this theory in their head and the thinking of the superstition and all that. And so whenever they're going crazy, absolutely that's what they're thinking about. Like this is happening to me because of this. Um but I actually just seen it as them going insane. And I mean, as far as the birds at the end, I just think that's what he deserved for beating that poor bird to death against that rock. I thought that was just so horrible. I was like, I know if he would have walked in here, they'd have been like, "What's wrong with you?" But yeah, that was. I just looked at it as them going crazy, and they had it in the back of their mind of the superstitions and of the supernatural of the sea. So that's what triggered their insanity, and it kept it going. Because any little thing, they could blame it on that, or they could feed off of it.
Any of you guys catch the allusion to Greek mythology with the ending? With the Prometheus story? You guys know the Prometheus story? Well, Prometheus in Greek mythology gave fire to humanity. Like, that's how humanity got fire. So, as punishments, Zeus bound Prometheus up, and for eternity, birds would eat at him. Right. So, yeah, this was very much also an allusion to that Greek myth. Prometheus gave us fire and the knowledge of fire. Right. So Zeus punished them for eternity by always having his innards eaten out all the time. So I don't know what that has to do with the movie, but it seemed like an allusion to that mythology to me.
I watched a couple videos before we got in class because I finished it about an hour and a half ago, and I was desperately trying to figure out at least a couple things about it, or at least trying to get some to kind of get the wheels turning. And somebody said that because I didn't want to just completely have it explained to me, I wanted to really think about it. But they said something like that scene is like him getting to heaven, like saying the pearly gates after finally conquering and killing and all of that, finally getting to this place that he wanted to go to, and then he gets cast out of heaven. So it kind of has the same type of vibe, but as the Prometheus story, but not exactly, I don't think.
We have William Dafoe's character, who seems like he's Poseidon in the flesh a couple of times too throughout the film. Um, we have the slimy tail, it looks like tentacles up in the lighthouse with him. Yeah, I mean, whether it's mythology at work here or just them going crazy, right? Just the very act of alluding to all this stuff is pretty cool. I think this is a movie. This is a very cerebral movie in that way. I'm sitting here double checking my facts about the Prometheus story. I didn't want to leave you guys wrong. Let's see. Yeah, I was right. The story goes, After Prometheus gave fire, Zeus decided that it was enough. He made Hephaestus himself chain Prometheus on Mount Caucasus, where the eagle would eat his liver forever. So Greek gods didn't mess around, right?
I got a little bit of when Robert Patterson's laying on at the last scene there, and the birds are on him eating his insides. And then in the foreground, in the background, there's a lot of birds flying around. And suddenly I got the little bit of fear of the Alfred Hitchcock, The Birds, because how powerful they were in that movie. They end up, these seagulls, they end up with the most power over everyone on the island. The humans are gone, and the birds are the dominant species on that island at that time. I was kind of eerie because it just brought back visions of that movie, The Birds. That movie, I watched it when I was a little kid, and it always scared me. And even today, when I watch it, it's just an eerie thing that you can't get away from the birds. And so neither could Thomas Howard. He was gone. He couldn't get away from the birds. He shouldn't have killed that bird, by the way. That seagull.
Yeah, you're leading us down a really interesting path here, Bill. Even like looking at the movie through an environmental perspective, right? Because like trying to even understand or comprehend like what goes through the minds of these animals, right, is almost a Lovecraftian exercise, right? Like what is this bird thinking? What's this bird's purpose? What's this bird's drive? Does it have the souls of dead sailors in it, lost at sea? And that's you're just trying to figure out this non-human life and what its aims are, what its drives are. That's a scary thing, right? Birds are, as you said with Hitchcock, right? Birds are often used to showcase this fear we have of animals and the unknown. Poe used it, right, with the Raven poem. Of course, we know too, birds go way back into the dinosaur era, right? So that's just the fact that they're so much older than humanity is interesting.
And there is a thought that nature takes back its own. If you, I've went into the woods many times and found an old building that was once a home that if you was, I don't know, 30 yards away, you'd never know it was a home until you walked right up on it, because nature took back its own. If you don't mow the weeds will take care, and the trees will come, and the animals will come, and it'll take back what it had before. So that's why we got a groom. And going back to the character of the older man, Thomas Wake, he was emphatic about telling this kid what to do. I mean, and not in a way that would be, well, we've all had some supervisors we could care less about, but somebody that was just the boss. And he was the boss. He wanted to be the boss in everything. And so he began by having this dominating attitude toward just everything, even the birds. Don't bother the bird. Make sure you don't. And then what do you see? The bird comes to the window, pecks on the window, gets his attention. And the bird is a progression through this movie that we see throughout the movie. Just now and then that bird will pop up, or a bird like it.
Yeah, you're leading us down another good path here, Bill, because these two power dynamics, like throughout the movie, it starts out with William Dafoe clearly in charge, right? As the movie goes on, Pattinson sort of becomes the one in charge, right? The foe even gets on his knees and barks.
Yeah.
Right. Pretty close to the end.
Sure does.
You can't be any more suppliant than that, right?
Yeah, he had a leash around his neck.
Yeah, like I think this too leads us down another road, which is the stuff with sex and sexual repression and stuff in the movie, right? Because these two are alone with each other, so it seems like they develop a weird bond the further we go through the movie, for sure. But the movie is kind of gross with some stuff here, right? We get Pattinson masturbating a couple of times during the movie. We have the whole scene with the mermaid, right? I'm curious to know what you guys think of that scene. Was the mermaid real, or was it a figment of his imagination? Actually read that the figures of mermaids are interesting, right? And it's an interesting discussion in itself about how mermaids have been sexualized throughout the centuries. Like in the Renaissance, they were painted as being these beautiful creatures, but they had human-like genitalia too, right? In the Victorian age, they closed the genitalia off, right? So where it looks more like the Little Mermaid or something like that, right? Then in this movie, they make it really gross, right? Because I actually read that they made the mermaid's private parts look like a shark's, right? So when Pattinson was doing his thing there, right, it was like a shark, what a shark's private parts look like. So that was interesting. What did you guys think of that scene? Did it take you off guard? What was even its point in the movie?
Well, I think one of the points of the movie is sexuality is certainly something that is very common to the mind. If the physical aspect is taken away, the mind still works. And, these two men had a hatred, but they also had a companionship, which is weird. It's a real weird. They aren't totally enemies. They are enemies. They danced together. They held one another. They ate together. They conversated. And this sexuality that is laced throughout the movie, I think is just a common theme of the mind of a human. So, I don't think you could see a man going totally crazy unless you brought that aspect out, which the directors and the producers did very well, really.
I think that it was brought out because it's human nature to want affection and want, I guess, acceptance in some way, physical way, with someone else. And, that's like Dad said, it's very real. I mean, that's very on point to how we are. Now, I don't believe that the mermaid was real, but this is, me watching the movie. I think that that was him, in his mind. But I believe that it's just, our want and need for human contact and human touch, or, whatever.
If I don't know, I forgot what I was gonna say, but anyways, I had 2 points. I forgot one. I knew the other. It was the mermaid scene. At first, like when it happened, I like afterwards, I just kind of wrote it off as a bad dream or something. But we didn't see him wake up necessarily. We just kind of saw him keep doing his regular thing. So now I'm thinking it might be just parts of him going insane, maybe. It's like alluding to him going insane. But that scene, if we're talking about the right scene, the scene where, or at least I'm guessing we're talking about the right scene, where he goes out on the rocks and she's there. He just sees this woman, and then it is a mermaid, and she starts yelling, and the yelling sounds almost like a bird screaming to me.
Mhm.
But that freaked me out. Like, I didn't necessarily see this movie as a horror movie, but that is one of 2 or 3 scenes that genuinely freaked me out. It took me a second to realize she was a mermaid, and then she's screeching, and he's like running away. It was a really weird scene in a way that I liked in terms of horror.
Yeah, that was the one scene, and the other scenes where he's actually having sex with it. All right, so that's the 2 times we see the mermaid.
The first time is he's underwater, isn't he? And he sees her. Well, that triggers his mind. His mind is triggered then, whether it be in a dream or whether it be whatever. He's intrigued now by that, and of course, then the mythologies come up, and that is mentioned, and so it's on his mind. So all these things are playing into his psyche. Plus, old man Lighthouse is driving him crazy. So I don't think that the mermaid is real, but it's real to him, and it's real in his mind. I'm sure probably Natasha's seen some of that on her duties as a police officer, that she's probably seen people out there that have seen things that, we don't see, but yet they're real to them at the time, whether it be because they've taken the wrong drug or something else. So it really was real to him. Um, but it wasn't, I don't believe it was real. I believe it was just part of his mind that the camera was allowing us to see.
What about for Willem Dafoe's character, right? What did he see in the lighthouse, in the light? What did Pattinson see in the light at the end? You guys have any thoughts on this? He's so guarded about being the one guy to manage the light. Thoughts on the meaning of the light and the purpose of it, and what did he see in it? What made Pattinson really lose it after he looked into the light?
It obviously has to be something like absolutely intensely positive, whether it's sexual or it's a physical or a spiritual thing. Like I said earlier, kind of almost has the idea of him finally like getting to heaven and then just being cast out at the last moment. Whatever it is, I don't know, but it has to be like obviously something very intense and addictive.
That's a good metaphor, Corey, because think about it. Like after that, we see him go down the stairs. So it's almost like a demon, the fallen angels falling from heaven. It's very, I never thought of that. That's interesting.
To be fair, it's not my point. I seen it in a video earlier today, but when I heard it, I was like, yeah, that's definitely probably what's going on, or at least that's a parallel to what the director's trying to say.
I think the
I would,
light is.
sorry, I was just gonna
Go ahead and
say,
finish, Corey.
I would just like to point out real quick that I've said like 7 times in this class. One of the things that I love about The Witch is that it like introduces sound and it makes it louder and louder and louder, and it's more intense and more intense and more intense, and then it's complete silence afterwards. That scene at the end with him yelling, and the yelling is actually the foghorn, and it's so intense, and you hear this music, and then you just hear him slip and then fall down the stairs, and it's just quiet. That brought me right back to the first time I witnessed that in The Witch. That is beautiful to me.
I think the scene in the lighthouse also, when he opens up and he sees light reveals, and light is a reflection. I believe he saw himself. I don't think he was very well pleased with what he saw, because he hasn't seen himself in quite a while, because they've been stuck on that island for a long time. So his partner has driven him to the edge of insanity. And I believe that the problem is he sees himself, and it's not a good picture when he does.
Kind of like how in Silence of the Lambs, right? Lecter tells Clarice to point the percent. Clarice actually tells Lecter to point the mirror back at himself and see what he sees. Right? That's kind of a similar image here to what you're saying, Bill.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite scenes from that movie, by the way, when she tells him, "Won't you point that high-powered perception back at yourself and see what you think?"
It is. And it stuns him. It catches him off guard. And I believe that's the point in that movie when he kind of looks away from her. He takes his focus off her, and he has a second or two to think about it, and then he throws it out of his head. Yeah, that's a great scene.
Other thoughts on the light and what it perhaps means? Ryan, you got any thoughts? I haven't heard from you in a little while.
Sorry, I've been busy trying to finish up dinner and eating it. What did you say?
What did you think about the light? What did Pattinson see in the light in the end?
Trying to think here. I am bad with names. I'm trying to remember who that was. He's not Thomas? Is he the other guy?
Both of them are named Thomas.
Oh,
Yeah. We've been calling them by their actor names, Pattinson and Defoe.
oh.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Let me get a picture of Pattinson so I can
He's the darker haired guy.
the younger one.
Yeah.
Trying to think. He's the one that survived and got mad at the end of the movie. If he's the younger one, I say he probably saw something that he didn't want to see, or he either saw something he didn't want to see, or a hope from God, or a message from God to not let the demons overcome him. Kind of set in religion, because when you die, you're always told to walk towards the light. I think it was him thinking he was seeing something like heaven through the light. I don't know if anybody else saw something similar.
Yeah, Corey said a second ago, it's almost like a fall from heaven. Right. Yeah, everybody in here has got a different perspective on what this means, which is pretty cool. Well, movies like this beg for interpretation. That's for sure. So another line of thought, Corey, you said a minute ago that you didn't consider this movie to be horror necessarily. What you guys, was this anything close to what you guys were expecting it to be when you first turned it on? Like, did you think you was going to get jump scares and all this type of stuff? Did you know what you were getting yourself into?
I really didn't know. I mean, the only thing that I knew was um, the mentions of it's two guys in a lighthouse and it's about them going insane. So as from that I knew, then yeah, it was the plot was pretty much kind of what I expected, but you know, with some added obviously. But yeah, I don't think that it's a horror genre myself. I mean, maybe suspense or something, but I mean, I don't see the horror in it. But I mean, I couldn't tell you the last time that I've actually been scared by a movie. So I mean, something's maybe creeped me out or something. But as far as a truly scary movie, and that's how I classify horror. So I haven't been really scared for a long time.
What horror movie really got under your skin, Crystal?
It sounds so crazy, but I was younger and it was called Candyman.
Oh yeah, Candyman. Yeah.
And that just freaked me out because that and Dr. Giggles come out at the same time. So like I watched them in theaters with my friends, you know, probably it seemed like it was close together, and those two really scared me and like actually creeped me out.
You see where Candyman's got a remake coming out?
No. Oh,
Yeah.
I've got to watch it.
It'll be in theaters soon. It's been done for a while, but it got postponed because of 2020. So it should be in the theaters.
Oh, wow. If you hear about it and know when it's coming out, let me know. I have to watch it. Like I was scared to death, like to say Candyman in a mirror. I was scared he was coming after me. I was done had already.
And Jordan Peele is making this one, so he's a very good director. You guys know him from his comedy too. Yeah, he's making this one. I'm excited about it.
I've gotten to the point where any Jordan Peele movie I'm going to watch. I was hooked with Get Out. I knew Us was going to be great, and Us turned out to be amazing. So even though I know nothing about Candyman other than very basic plot points, I'm going to watch that for sure.
Yeah,
I think horror.
Go ahead, Natasha.
I think horror has definitely changed recently they've kind of run out of ideas. So what they have to do now is go a bit more on the psychological angle. And that's what I think they did with this one. That's what I think Roger Ebert did with The Witch, because they marketed that. I don't think they did the right job marketing that. People were thinking, oh, let's go see a traditional horror movie, you know, but then you get there, like, this is not what we were expecting. So that's just my take on it. I think that horrors had to get a lot more creative, kind of like with Us and all of those Peele movies. I think they're going to continue to be weird, and they're going to continue to like push you and make you think. So
That's all. I agree with that. And the psychological it's scary because the mind is a scary thing. I mean, you think about everything that your mind can store in there, and then you think about how it would feel to go insane. And you know, like Dad made an interesting point earlier. You know, if someone's on drugs or whatever the case, I mean, we see it pretty prevalent in our area. But whenever you're under the influence of something like that, and even though everybody around you don't see the purple monkey in the tree, but you do, you literally see that. They believe that with all their heart, and that has to be scary and feel alone. So in that sense, you could look at it as horror. So that's a good point, Natasha.
You know, back in the 60s and 70s, maybe even before then, there were actors that primarily were in horror movies. Vincent Price, Boris Karloff, those kind of people. We had Dracula. You know, there was one I think I'd mentioned before called Black Sunday. Then after that, there was a remake of Black Sunday. There were movies called The House on the Haunted Hill. There was a lot of ghostly kind of things and vampires. You don't see that anymore. And I think what Natasha brought across was something I had never thought about, but it's true. They've taken that genre into the mind rather than the spook of it. And so I think that's how horror has changed. And I think that's why it's hard to define what it should be called. This movie to me was it was a movie that I think I would classify as creepy and weird if that was a classification. So I think the days of a horror, I guess it's how a person defines it, what it really is.
Yeah, the spook and jump scares and all that, that's still popular, right? The Conjuring films are very popular now, right? Like, that's how I would, the Annabelles and the Nuns, right? That whole series of movies, right? That's more traditional stuff. Um, I'm sure you guys have seen some of those.
And there was a series that I was watching, haunted some and it was about this big huge mansion and these kids, their parents had died, and they had the housekeeping staff and whatever, you know.
Haunting a Hill House.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I loved it. And that actually scared me. But it was like, what was scary is whenever the guy would come looking around in the windows and just different things whenever they would see the woman, you know, from the lake and all of that. Like that kind of stuff did scare me too. But it kept my interest very much so. Whenever I was growing up, our scary movies were cheesy as could be. I mean, they were just hilarious.
Yeah, you can't watch an old scary movie now because our technology has advanced to such a degree that now you find yourself watching those and it's, you know, a fake ghost, where back then it would scare you. But you know, now it is humorous. That's Crystal and I were talking about in one of the movies here a couple of weeks. I can't remember which one it was, that we laughed. I mean, because you know, it's but the technology has in some ways spoiled us to the older flicks that may have been they were good at one time for sure.
Yeah. I mean, even
Yeah.
the classics to me, like the Halloween and Jason's and stuff, that's hilarious. Always has been. Like when they brought out Scary Movie, I was like, absolutely, this, like all of those kind of things. That's just how I felt about it. I thought they were all hilarious in their generic kind of their generic jump scares, I guess.
That the Haunting a Hill House, which you mentioned, it's a famous novel too from back in the 50s. They adapted it into that show, but they adapted it really well. Like that was a very good show. I just finished watching it a week or two ago. So it's very psychological. Like I would recommend it.
Oh, it was great, wasn't it? And there's a few more out there that's titled around the same. So I don't know if they're kind of similar
Yes.
or what, but I need to watch them.
Yeah, so in the 60s, they made that book into a movie, but it was just called The Haunting. So I would recommend that movie. It's a really good one from the 60s. adapted the Haunting of Hill House story. And then Haunting of Hill House gets confused with House on Haunted Hill, which is a completely
Yes.
different. That's the Vincent Price movie.
Yes.
Yes, I would definitely recommend. That's my favorite horror film from the '60s. Is The Haunting from 1963. I would recommend that one to you guys as well. I'm glad we're having this conversation. If you guys didn't notice, every horror film I picked has been one of these psychological types of films, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Exorcist, The Thing, Silence of the Lambs, and this, all I think could classify as the Babadook for next class, which we'll end horror on, is definitely along these lines too.
So
Before
what are
we
we watching for Tuesday? I'm
that's
sorry.
the Babadook. That's the
Okay.
last one.
All right. I'm sorry, Corey. I didn't mean to interrupt you, buddy.
You're good, no worries. I just wanted to say before we close, I need to acknowledge the lobster scene and how good of a monologue Willem Dafoe had. When he was going on and talking about may Neptune smite thee and like all of that, I wasn't scared. It wasn't horror scary, but it was very intimidating. And like I'm good at empathizing with people. Is like if I can hear the hurt in their voice, I'm like, oh, that's sad. So I heard him say like, please, like why don't you like my like you have to like my lobster at least or whatever. And he was like, I don't have to say nothing. And then he finally broke. I was like, you know what? I'm very intimidated by you, but at the same time, he kind of deserved it. And then they broke the tension with, you know what? Fine, I like your lobster. I even said out loud, I said, I'm still intimidated, but that was hilarious.
Yeah, that was a very good scene. I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, I thought to myself, "Damn, William Dafoe deserves an award just for that speech." Like that was such a good delivery. He's a treasure of an actor. Like I love him in just about everything he's in. Like it's kind of funny he did this and Aquaman back to back. So like he's getting C roles in his later career. It seems like he was at he was in a really good '80s movie. What's the name of the movie before we hang up? Streets of Fire. Streets of Fire from the '80s. That's a really interesting film. It's like a rock and roll fantasy type of movie. So I would recommend that one if you want to see more Willem Dafoe. All right, guys. So Babadook will end horror next week. Then our last genre after that will be, well, we have two more. We got comedies, and then we're doing 2 superhero films. So yeah, we got two more genres. So I'm really looking forward to comedy. Like that comedy is how I've designed this class to end both semesters, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing something humorous after all this. Of course, comedy is often laced with sadness and all that too. So, as we shall see. So, yeah, class is ending on a high note, I think. So, spread the word. Like I said, keep spreading the word. Tell your friends about it. I'm teaching this class again next semester. So, hopefully we'll get another good group.
Well, if you don't, just holler at me. I'll sneak.
Come on by, right?
Well, I'll have a reunion meeting and show them how to do a class. I've been telling everybody, I said, if anybody needs an arts class, I'm telling you what you need to take. I know you need to take it with. I said, it's just amazing. Like, we have so much fun. I look forward to that class. And like, when it's time for it to end, I'm like, man, is it already 15 after 6?
Yeah.
This is crazy. Like, I'm ready to keep talking, regardless what it's about. So I'm serious about the once a month, at least once a month, movie class. Corey,
Yeah.
you better come. I mean, I'd really like to continue doing it because I've just enjoyed it that much. It's been amazing. And I got my stuff for graduation and all that. So because of this class, I finally took this one class.
Yeah, Southern's going back to almost all live classes next semester. I don't know if you've seen that, Crystal, but yeah, they're getting rid of online classes for the most part. So maybe this class will attract more people then too, since they don't take online art or music. So,
Well, why not utilize the ICRs? They've put all this money into it. Why not utilize them?
right.
I mean, they could do that with the nursing classes and everything. I mean, go over to Logan or whatever whenever they need their clinicals. But as far as instruction and stuff, they could do those ICR and really expand. But you know, who am I? I can't tell them what to do. But yeah, I think that's really good in theory. But to be honest with you, I just don't think that's going to work. I think that they're going to see a little bit of a drop. There's some people that like to be in person, but you know, these